Hello, I'm Locke, Meredith. I'd like to invite you to join me on the next Legal Lines, where I have on the show Judge Tony Marabella. He is a criminal court judge in the 19th JDC and our drug court judge. He's going to tell us why there exists a drug court, how less than 3 out of 100 return after they participate, and how drug court saves us $30,000 per participant. So join us on the next Legal Lines with Judge Tony Marabella.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith, and I have a Legal Lines tip for you. Remember, knowledge is power. And I want you to know if you're injured, Louisiana law grants you a variety of claims to make sure you're fully compensated. It's generally chopped up into several categories, the first being general damages. That's going to compensate you for your mental and physical pain and suffering, your scarring, disability, functional limitations, your loss of enjoyment of life. Also, it will compensate your family, frankly, for your loss of affection. It's called loss of consortium claim. Next category is specific damages. Those would be, say, for example, past and future lost wages, past and future medical expenses. You also have a claim sometimes for what's called punishment damages or punitive damages, typically only available when you're injured by a drunk party. Finally, you're entitled to legal interest from the date you file your lawsuit until you're paid, and court costs. So my Legal Lines tip to you from me, Locke Meredith: make sure you know what your claims are.
This has been Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, welcome to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. I'm pleased to have back on the show Judge Tony Marabella. He's a judge for the 19th Judicial District Court. He's focused 100% on crime, and particularly the drug court. Judge, it's great to have you back.
Thank you, Locke.
Got to tell
Pleasure
everybody
being
on behalf of certainly myself and the whole entire parish, thank you for your service to our city and our court system, because I heard you're retiring after
Thank you.
a long stint in this world, and you have really poured your life into it and saved lives, I know.
Thank you.
So we very much appreciate your commitment and service.
Thank you.
So why are you retiring?
Well, I'm 71 years old.
Which I can't believe.
I've been at this for 45 years, and I'm ready to move on to another phase. I'm not, I don't think I'm going to shut things down. I'm going to continue to volunteer. I want to stay active in the drug court movement. I've got some things in the fire right now that I volunteer to do.
Well, like I told you, Judge Mayor Broom wants to get with you. I told her you were next, so she's ready to get with you.
I've got some things. I'm very active in the Louisiana District Judges Association, and I intend to stay that way. And
excellent. That's good news.
Would like to help any way I can. So I'm going to keep my hands in the fire.
Well, I'm going to talk to you from the context of kind of a wise elder now, because you've done this a long time. I think private practice for 30-something years?
I was in private practice for 30 years, and then I've been a judge now for 15 years.
And in the private practice, you were on the prosecuting side as an assistant parish attorney and also district attorney?
I was an assistant parish attorney, which was a city prosecutor's office. I prosecuted there for about a year. Then I was in the district attorney's office for about 3.5 years, prosecuting felony cases.
And then shifted gears, right?
Then I did. I moved from there to the public defender's office.
Which I didn't understand. Y'all actually kind of started it, didn't you?
We did. When Alton Moran was an assistant district attorney when I was in the DA's office, and Alton was appointed the first staff member, the first supervisor of the public defender's office to put together a staff system. And so he offered a job to several of us assistant district attorneys that were there. And I was one of them, and we took it over, and we started what is now the staff system in East Baton Rouge Parish, one of the most successful public defender's offices in the state because of the way it's run. Many of the public defender's offices don't have staffs. They use contract lawyers, but the staff system has really worked well here in Baton Rouge for, well, that was in 1978 when we started that. So it's,
and it's interesting, in private practice, I think Mr. Bush was a district attorney.
Brian Bush was the DA, and Brian Bush and I practiced together, and then Brian ran, and I believe it was 1994 for DA. He got elected, and I basically took over the practice that we had there, and continued to practice. I practiced a while with John DiGiulio. John and I practiced together, and then I had a few other lawyers who worked with me from time to time, and then Hiller Moore left Hiller, who was an investigator with the DA's office for
Who is now our district attorney.
17 years. He was a young investigator when I was in the DA's office.
Is that right?
He went to law school, and he was in his last year of law school. He came to work with me his last year of law school. We became partners, and we stayed together until in the late 90s. And of course, he is now the district attorney. So very proud of him, and very pleased with my experience. I've been very fortunate. I've worked with some really good lawyers.
They are. Tell me, you know, you have this broad perspective, and then 16 years as a judge?
16 right now, yep.
And so you have stayed on the criminal bench. We've talked about this before. A lot of times when a judge is elected, he'll work for a brief stint on the criminal
and
side.
move to the civil.
And move
right,
to the civil, because
exactly.
frankly, there's more folks
Yeah.
that deal with civil
Yeah.
law than criminal, but because that was your expertise, you stayed, you enjoyed it. But you spearheaded into the drug court, I guess, kind of as a, was it something you sought, or was it something
No,
that
it was something
dropped in
that
your lap?
it sort of fell into me. When I first got elected, you know, as they say, things roll downhill. Seniority basically is the way the judiciary operates.
Right.
Judge Morvant, Billy Morvant, was the drug court judge. Billy had all of the drug court cases. It wasn't just a treatment court as we have now, but he handled all of the drug
really?
court cases.
I didn't understand that distinction.
There is a distinction. Billy handled
Wow.
all
So
of the
much
drug.
larger
He had
caseload.
all of the drug court cases, and it was just. And I practiced as a criminal defense lawyer, and I was in drug court, and I saw the volume in that court, and the problem that I saw with the big, huge drug court, the way they had it, is it was almost like an administrative court. You just move things through. The very few trials, very few. The volume was so tremendous. You spent your time reassigning files. Letting people go to treatment, which was good, but your docket would just grow and grow and grow. And so when I got elected, I figured that's where I was going. And so I was closing up my office. My office was over on Quail Run Drive. And I was closing up my office, and directly across the parking lot was a law firm, D.R. Atkinson.
Oh,
D.R.'s a long
John
time.
Perry and that crew.
Long time, yep. And so DR was coming outside, and I've told this story before, probably on your show here, and he has given me absolute approval to do it. DR said, he said, Tony, what kind of docket you going to be handling? I said, I'm afraid they want me to do the drug court, and I really don't want to do it because it looks like it's a social workers kind of court, you know. And he said, he put his arm around me, and he kind of looked at me, and he had a little tear in his eye, and said, let me tell you. He said, that drug court saved my son's life.
That's right.
And
Their families dealt with that
And I
directly.
said, really? And so he told me the story. And I said, well, you know, maybe I'll consider that. Well, as it turned out, Judge Johnson decided to take over the big drug court. So he took that over, and I took over a criminal docket. And then about 8 or 9 months later, he realized how difficult it was, how much work Judge Morvant had really done in 6 years. And he decided that he didn't want to do that anymore. So we all met, and I agreed to form the drug treatment program, the drug treatment court. So in addition
to...
to...
It was a subset of the criminal drug prosecution?
It is. Well, there's a statute, and it's in Title 13, and it creates the drug court. And it allows each jurisdiction to designate one particular judge to be the drug division court.
Okay.
And so I agreed to do it. They appointed me as that judge, and I've been that judge now for 14 years. And so what we did is I went around the country, I went through all sorts of, the Supreme Court was wonderful. They sent me to schools, they sent me places to learn what to do, how to do it. So we put together our treatment program. It took us about 3 years. We went in-house. We have now an in-house program that works strictly for the 19th Judicial District Court. We don't hire outside people to come in. We have our own program. And we meet once a week, every week with, I meet with everybody who's in my drug court, and they come before me just like you and I are talking. I'll talk to them for about 10 or not 10 or 15 minutes, but about 3 or 4 minutes, because we've got about 100 of them, but they come and see me every day.
All right, well, we're going to continue this and how you got there. So this is Locke Meredith on Legal Lines. My special guest, Judge Tony Marabella, talking about the drug court. We'll be right back.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith with a Legal Lines tip for you. Document your claim. What do I mean? Whenever you present a claim, whether it's for injuries in an automobile collision or for a breach of contract case or a business claim, it all boils down to documentation and evidence. For example, when you go to trial, basically both sides are presenting their evidence of what they believe to be their case. For example, also, if you're involved in an automobile collision, document the event. Talk to all the parties who are involved. Get their names, address, contact information, insurance info. Talk to the witnesses on the scene. Also get their contact information. Take photographs. With the phones we all have these days, everybody can take a picture and that paints 1,000 words. So document your claim. The Legal Lines tip from me, Locke Meredith, to you is document the claim.
This has been Legal Lines Tips.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. I'm pleased to have back on the show Judge Tony Marabella. He is the drug court judge, criminal judge, also 19th Judicial District. He's retiring, so we're sad for the loss, but he's explaining to us the importance of the drug court. Judge, so you experienced the private practice for 30 years and then 16 years on the drug court in the criminal as a judge. And so, as I understand it, alcohol, drugs, that world controls the crime.
It really does. Statistics show that nationwide, 86% of all crime is drug-related, drug or alcohol-related.
So 86 out of 100 individuals, there's some drug component.
Some drug involved. They may be on drugs when they commit the crime. They may commit a crime to get the drugs, or it may be a drug crime, distribution or possession of whatever. But that is the way it is, and that is nationwide. Everybody agrees with that. That's nationwide.
Unbelievable. So clearly, the fact that that percentage, 8 out of 9 or 9 out of 10 rather, of the guys convicted of a crime or criminals participating in crime is related to drugs screams we got to do something about the drug, right?
Exactly.
And that was the kind of the impetus for the drug court?
The idea for the drug courts and what has really made the drug courts work is the judge, not Tony Marabella, but the fact that there is a judge overseeing what happens, because the statistics show that people who go into treatment voluntarily, 50% of them don't even show up. After about 2 or 3 days, 65% people leave. So it's just not very effective. You've got to have some hammer to keep them there. Oftentimes they go inpatient. They'll go inpatient, but they'll stay 2 or 3 days. They're free to walk out the doors. There's no lockdown.
So the days when part of probation was that just really wasn't working?
It isn't working because there's no follow-up to that. You know, in prison, years ago, there really was no treatment at all. But Secretary Jimmy LeBlanc, who is now the head of Department of Corrections, he has really implemented a lot of rehabilitation programs there. We have that reentry program that you probably are familiar with. That is very, very good. They've got what they call the Steve Hoyle program. Steve Hoyle was a gentleman who the program was named after, but that is their substance abuse program. That program is an excellent program. We have visited that program. The only problem with that is that it's wonderful because they're in prison, they're captured and they have to go to treatment, but when they get out, there's no mandatory follow-up. I mean, they are on parole, but there's not someone watching them every day. And that's the difference with the drug court. We watch them every day. They see us every day. They see our treatment folk every day. They're tested, they're drug tested often. They, again, come to see me every day, once every week. And of the people who come into the drug court, 65% graduate. Now, of those that don't graduate, they do get a lot of good treatment, And for the most part, their recidivism rate is much lower as well.
Do you know what it is?
The recidivism rate for those who come into the drug court but don't complete the program for whatever reason is, their recidivism rate is around 12%. Wow. The graduates of the drug court is around 3%. And that is an unbelievably low percentage. That is an unbelievably low percentage.
The guys that are getting treatment, I guess they're drying out in prison and then getting some form of treatment, that includes all levels of criminal activity, behavior?
It does.
So whether it's a murderer down to somebody
murderers probably don't. They go to Angola, and I don't know how much there is there in Angola, but most of the treatment is at the ancillary prisons.
Okay.
There's a prison in Tallulah. There's one in Richmond. There are various parishes where they have the various treatment.
All right, and so the way that it's determined that somebody gets to your drug court is how?
The district attorney is the gatekeeper. The DA,
so that'd be Hill or Moore for us.
Hill or Moore for us is the gatekeeper. His office is the gatekeeper. They will look at, there's criteria for the drug court. You can't have it. The crime for which you're coming into the drug court can't be a crime of violence. It can't be a sex offense, and it can't be a crime of violence.
So bottom line is, if your crime involves another human being, you don't get a shot at drug court?
Depending. It depends. For example, when they first started the drug court, they wouldn't let domestic abuse battery cases come in. But then I think as time went on, we all knew this going in, they realized that a lot of domestic abuse battery cases or domestic abuse issues involve alcohol and drugs.
Right.
I mean, it's violence, but it involves alcohol and drugs. And if you can't get to that root problem, you're going to continue to have that issue. And domestic abuse violence is a misdemeanor. So the most they can get is 6 months. So they've changed the law. The drug court judges have worked, and so we now have it to where the district attorney can, if a person is, you have to be eligible to be on probation to come into the drug court because you're on probation. If they are eligible to come into probation office, it's really discretionary with the DA to let them in. And we're very fortunate in East Baton Rouge Parish. There are some district attorneys around the state that don't let everybody in the drug court that deserves to come into the drug court. I'm not commenting on that. I just know it to be a fact. Okay. We have been very fortunate here. Doug Morrow was very receptive with us, with our drug court. Hiller's office as well is very, very receptive.
And so Hiller has a set of people that evaluate this, and then he presents the information to Hiller?
Actually, it is every section of court has the authority to send people to our drug court. But Hiller has designated the DAs who practice in my section, since I'm the drug court judge, to be the drug court DAs. So we've got, but every assistant DA in each section of court, and we have 8 sections of court, each assistant DA there can, on behalf of the office, recommend somebody to come into the drug court. And they often do.
And so the demand for the drug court, people that qualify for drug court, overwhelms your capacity, as I understand.
Well, sometimes it does and sometimes it don't, because word is it's hard. Drug court is hard. And you know, the jailhouse talk and you know, they oftentimes, when people get about to come into drug court, you know, I've heard it's real hard, I'm not sure I really want it, you know, the judge is tough and all of this. And to some extent, I am pretty tough because we've got very strict rules, because the drug court to me has 2 tracks. And it's 2 tracks for everybody. And those 2 tracks are, one is the obvious, and that is substance abuse treatment. But the other is behavior. Many of the people who have been on drugs for years have no discipline. They've got no structure in their lives. Sleep till noon, never had a job, things like that. So we are very, very structured. They have to be at class. If they're 5 minutes late for a class, we don't let them in. They come back and see me on Monday. I put them in jail for 2 days.
All right, we'll continue this on the last segment. This is Locke, Meredith of Legal Lines. We'll be right back with Judge Tony Marabella talking about the drug court.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith with a Legal Lines tip for you. Document your claim. What do I mean? Whenever you present a claim, whether it's for injuries in an automobile collision or for a breach of contract case or a business claim, it all boils down to documentation and evidence. For example, when you go to trial, basically both sides are presenting their evidence of what they believe to be their case. For example, also, if you're involved in an automobile collision, document the event. Talk to all the parties who are involved. Get their names, address, contact information, insurance info. Talk to the witnesses on the scene. Also get their contact information. Take photographs. With the phones we all have these days, everybody can take a picture and that paints 1,000 words. So document your claim. The Legal Lines tip from me, Locke Meredith, to you is document the claim.
This has been Legal Lines Tips.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. Pleased to have back on the show Judge Tony Marabella. He is the drug court judge for the East Baton Rouge Parish 19th Judicial District Court. He's also a criminal judge. We're talking about the drug court and the reason it exists. Talked about its success. Talk about what folks have to go through briefly when they're there. As I understand it, there's 4 phases.
There are 4 phases. The drug court takes a minimum 12 months to get through it. Average probably 18 months to 2 years. They could go as long as 5 years. We've had people go through as much as 5 years. The first phase is an educational phase, basically to kind of acclimate them to drug use, what it does to their body, those sorts of things. And that phase lasts probably, depends. They have to pass certain stages to be able to get, it's not tests, but they have to get through things. There's coursework, there are some tests that they have to do, so they have to complete all of those projects. That first phase is basically educational, lasts generally several months. The second stage is sort of a self-recognition. They do a life story. They have to put together their entire life story, and they'll come to court sometimes, and I'll talk to them. I'll say, well, what you working on right now? Well, I'm working on my life story. Well, how was that? Oh my gosh, it was difficult. I can't believe where I've been, what I've done.
What is the saying? A life unexamined is not a life worth living.
Yeah. When I look, they say when I look back, I'm just thankful that I'm still alive, So they have to go that. It's sort of a self-recognition phase, and that phase lasts several months at least. And again, when I say a couple of months or 3 months, that's fast. That's as quick as they can get through.
And they're getting drug tested every week and seeing you every week.
Drug tested randomly 2-3 times a week. The third phase basically is a phase that teaches them some tools to learn what their triggers are. Usually the triggers are people, places, and things. Sometimes it's anger. Sometimes it's depression. Sometimes they require some medication that they've never been on. So, and then finally the last stage is we call it continuing care, but it's basically a stage to assist them once they're able to get out of the program.
So life skills.
When I first took over the program, when they graduated, it sort of ended, and I got nervous about that because I could tell some of the people in the program were relapsing, never relapsed before, but were relapsing because they were scared to leave.
They weren't ready for independence.
They weren't ready to get out. So we put together this continuing care program. So it's a program that is not nearly as intense as the program itself, but it keeps them in the program. They come.
It's relationships, Judge.
And what they do is they mentor the new people that come in.
So what a great idea.
It really kind of re-energizes itself. So it really works well.
What mental component is there to this? Because, I'm reading more and more and hearing about a lot of folks are in the jails because of mental problems and such. Well, is there a component of that in this?
The mental component is a real issue. When Judge Morvant, I think you and I have talked about this before. Since I'm the only drug court judge in East Baton Rouge Parish, I have had come through my court my own relatives. I've had my relatives come in, my friends, children.
I believe it. Every socioeconomic group, right?
Yeah. So
nobody's immune.
So they all come through. They've all come through my program, And I was representing a relative of mine when Judge Morvant was still the drug court judge. And back, there was a place in Pineville, it was called Red River in Pineville. It was a facility, one of the only facilities in Louisiana that recognized co-occurring disorders, which means you have a substance abuse issue as well as a mental health issue. And once they sort of put all of that together,
that makes sense.
Almost everybody that is on a drug addicts have some sort of co-occurring disorder. There's some people who maybe went to college and got hooked because their buddies were on it and stuff like that, but the majority of the people who are drug addicts, it's because of some co-occurring disorder.
So what are we doing about it?
It's very difficult.
Is there anything
to deal
going
with
on?
that. See, we don't have a doctor who works for us in the drug court. We have to use the facilities that the state has. Now, unfortunately, you know, a couple of years ago, they shut down most of the mental facilities.
That's right.
So we've got a few of them now. Now, with this new law that they're trying to enact, they have enacted now, I think things are going to get a little better.
And you're talking about the new legislation
that's
kind of reshuffled and reconsidered sentencing and probationary periods and such.
Now, you know, one of the areas that is very popular now around the country and in Louisiana as well, especially with the Supreme Court is pushing specialty courts. Drug court is a specialty court. Mental health courts are a specialty court. Judge Peter Garcia in St. Tammany Parish has Louisiana's first mental health court, and he has really done a tremendous job with it. We're hoping to get one here in East Baton Rouge Parish, but it takes money. It takes a lot. You need the facilities.
And dedicated people.
You need the facilities to do that. Now, a couple of last year, sometimes there was a tax that was a bond that was tried to be passed so we could get some mental health help, and it didn't pass. But Hiller Moore, our district attorney, he's working with the Baton Rouge Area Foundation. They've got a grant that they are trying to find low-risk people, nonviolent offenders who go to jail, who have mental issues, that they can help supervise. The way it's going to work is they'll be contacting the judge, whoever's on duty to set the bond, and say, Judge, look, this is what this guy's got. These are the offenses he's got. We would like you to set a bond. We're going to find a facility to put this person in. We've had him evaluated, and he or she has a mental issue that needs to be addressed. Would you set a bond to make that as a condition of bond? We're going to get them to that facility, and we're going to make sure that they go to that facility. So the next time they see you, hopefully they will have some treatment and do. So those are the sorts of things that need to be done.
So much more creative. So let's point out to the folks, not only is the recidivism rate, what, 1/10?
Right.
At least, way less than that.
Less, yeah.
You said for this, it's less than 3%.
It is.
It's 90% if you just stay in jail, typically.
Right.
And it saves $30,000
per year.
Per person. So it's kind of a no-brainer.
It is.
Tell the folks, you've now played a lot of roles, had a lot of hats. This has been, as I understand it, the thing you felt like God has used you most in your life.
I have been on the criminal bench for 15 years, and I say 4 days a week, but it's really 5 days a week. I do my drug court on one of those 5 days. But I say this oftentimes, I think I'm doing good in the criminal arena. I think I'm doing good for the citizens of East Baton Rouge Parish. I'm trying to keep them safe. I don't know how much good I'm doing for the people that appear before me, because my job is to mete out justice and try to send them where they need to send to be rehabilitated.
But the drug court.
But I can't do everything. But in the drug court, I'm hands-on. I deal with these people. I know them on a first name basis. I call them by their first name.
Judge, thank you.